All right, let's dive into a powerful and, I've got to warn you, a pretty unsettling cautionary tale that comes to us from a town called Sultanpur. This is a story about cruelty, an orphan's cry for justice, and the absolutely terrifying consequences that can follow when that cry is heard.
The source material for this explainer literally begins with this sentence. It's a heck of a way to start, right? And it really sets the tone perfectly. This isn't just a story, it's an account that's meant to hit you right in the chest. So let's get into the heart of it.
So at the center of all this is a little 8-year-old girl named Zainab. After a terrible accident took her parents, she was left completely alone in the world, an orphan. She's taken in by her uncle, which you'd think would be a good thing. But as we're about to see, this wasn't a rescue. It was the beginning of a living nightmare.
So, who's in this house? Well, first you have Zainab's uncle, Sajid. He's described as a religious man, but critically, he's passive. He stays silent when he should speak up. The real villain of our story is her aunt, Shabnam, a woman whose cruelty is apparently matched only by her beauty. And then you've got her cousins, Faizan and Zoya, who are basically treated like a little prince and princess.
And I mean, the difference between their lives is just staggering. Zainab wasn't treated like family, not even close. She was the unpaid household servant. While her cousins are feasting on rich foods like milk, almonds, and meat palau, and wearing beautiful silk clothes, Zainab gets stale dry bread and wears rags. And the worst part? She's forced to watch them eat, a constant, painful reminder of exactly where she stands.
This was Zainab's prayer, her quiet, desperate prayer every single day. Can you just imagine the level of suffering that would lead a small child to ask for one of two things? Either the patience to endure unimaginable pain, or for death to just come and take her away. It's absolutely heartbreaking. But it gets worse. A lot worse. The daily neglect and mistreatment, well, that was just the baseline. It soon spiraled into outright violent abuse. And this is where the story takes a truly dark turn.
So picture this. Zainab hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. The smell of chicken curry cooking is just overwhelming. She finally gets up the courage to timidly ask her aunt for just a little bit of the gravy for her dry bread. And what's Shabnam's response? Pure rage. She grabs the searing hot cooking ladle right from the pot and strikes the little girl on the wrist. It was an act of just unbelievable cruelty, born from pure, unadulterated hatred.
And that was the threat that came right after the attack. Just let that sink in for a second. Shabnam didn't just physically burn Zainab, she terrorized her. She made it crystal clear that from now on, even looking at the family's food was a crime, punishable by being blinded. That's the level of psychological torment this poor girl was living with every day.
And the abuse wasn't only physical. It was designed to break her spirit. During Eid, which is supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, Zainab was deliberately humiliated. Dressed in a shabby tunic literally made from an old curtain, she was forced to stay hidden with the goats, away from all the guests. She was made to feel like she was something to be ashamed of, something less than human. But there is a limit to what any human being can endure, and one final, brutal act of cruelty became the absolute breaking point. It pushed Zainab to make one last appeal, not for patience this time, but for justice. After being thrown some scraps of food like an animal, she was forbidden from drinking water. Desperate with thirst, she tried to get just a sip from the animal's trough outside, but her aunt caught her. Shabnam grabbed a wooden plank, and this detail is just horrific, a plank with a rusty nail sticking out of it, and beat Zainab with it, tearing into the little girl's back.
And that was it. Something snapped. Lying on the ground, bleeding, in agony, her prayer changed. It was no longer a quiet plea for patience or death. It was a demand for divine intervention. It was the cry of an orphan that, as the story goes, shook the very foundations of heaven.
And the response was immediate, and it was terrifying. The entire narrative shifts right here. We go from the suffering of a helpless orphan to the swift, direct, and inescapable retribution that fell upon her abuser. The justice that came for Shabnam was poetic, in a horrifying way. The very next day, she woke up feeling like her throat was blocked by burning embers. She was surrounded by the same rich food she denied Zainab, but she couldn't eat or drink a thing. For an entire month, she was tormented by the exact same hunger and thirst she'd inflicted on her niece. Her body just withered away until she died an agonizing death, her face frozen in a mask of pure terror.
You'd think her story ends there,
right? With her death? Oh no. According to this account, her punishment wasn't over. The true horror was revealed for all to see during her funeral and burial. It became a public spectacle of divine wrath.
What happened next was just one chilling event after another. Her body, they found, was covered in unexplainable black and blue marks. Her coffin was so heavy it took many, many men to even lift it. Then, at the gravesite, everyone heard a loud explosion from inside the grave, followed by Shabnam's scream. They could hear the sound of bones breaking and walls crushing, as if the grave itself was attacking her. And then, the final terrifying image: giant black snakes with glowing red eyes slithered out of the earth and stood guard over the grave.
So, after all of that horror, what's the takeaway? What's the lesson here? Well, the story wraps up with a very clear and powerful moral about justice and, of course, repentance.
Seeing all of this with his own eyes, seeing the consequences of his wife's cruelty and his own silence, it finally broke Sajid, the passive uncle. He and his children fell at Zainab's feet, just begging for her to forgive them. And from that day on, they spent the rest of their lives completely dedicated to her, finally giving her the love and care she deserved all along. The central lesson of this whole tale is really captured in this one idiom: Allah's stick is silent. What does that mean? It means that justice might not make a sound when it's coming. There might not be any warning at all, but when it finally strikes, its impact is absolute, and there is no escaping it.
And the story also presents the flip side, the other path that could have been taken. It presents a stark choice. There's a teaching in Islamic tradition that promises the highest possible reward, being close to the Prophet in paradise, as close as 2 fingers together, for the simple act of caring for an orphan. This really puts Shabnam's cruelty into the sharpest possible contrast with the kindness that is so highly valued.
And really, that's the question this whole story leaves us wrestling with. It's a profound and terrifying warning about the incredible weight our actions carry, especially towards the most vulnerable among us. If a simple act of kindness towards an orphan holds such a great reward, the story of Shabnam and Zainab forces us to ask, what then is the terrible price for causing one to cry out in pain?